Hello, Fear folks, and welcome in FEARDEMIC'S apartment. My name is Łukasz, and that's enough about me. Let's get to my today's guest, the man, the myth, the legend, guy who is working at Supermassive Games and was behind such titles like Until Dawn, The Devil in Me, which is a part of the Dark Pictures anthology. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Heaton.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. I'm good, thank you.
Super excited to speak with you, and mostly I really want to take a look at the cinematic aspect of your games, naturally. But before that, I need to warn you about one thing. I really like to dig in the past.
Okay.
I will do it some today. That's why my first question is, how did your adventure with game dev started?
It's an odd story, how I got into games. I was quite old. I was around 30.
Oh, very old.
And well, for an intro to game dev, that is quite old. And I was trying to be a writer, actually. And I was, in the evenings, I was working in a theatre. I'd always played games, ever since I was a kid. I'd always played games. But I didn't have any idea about developing them. And then I had a birthday. And for my birthday, I asked my mum for a copy of Quake 3 Arena. Do you remember that game?
Of course.
Right. So I really liked Quake 2. So I got Quake 3 Arena, and I actually couldn't play it for a couple of weeks. But I played it, and I played nothing else for about 3 months, and I got very, very good at it. And then I discovered that it came with a level editor. So then I got completely hooked on that, and I made tons of levels, and I got very deeply embedded in that community. It was a real thriving community. I started making mods for it as well. And suddenly, people in that community started getting hired into the games industry, usually as level designers. And I became specialized in one weird bit of the Quake engine, which was shaders, which were a really new thing at that point. And through some kind of weird, I knew someone that was making a tool to do the shaders, and I kind of became the best person in the world at this one tiny little thing, and I got hired for it by EA, who were making a Quake 3 Revolution. So, that was a strange, I didn't know what happened, really. I got hired into this thing. EA was a huge studio in Surrey. It was full of people that knew what they were doing and had been in the games industry for years, and I didn't have a clue. You know, I was someone trying to be a writer that worked in the theatre, and I remember on my second day hiding in the toilet thinking, I do not know what to do in this job. Anyway, the shaders, also they said, oh, by the way, we're not using that shader system, we're using a completely different shader system. So okay, but somehow the game got made, and after that, I was in the games industry after that. So
your adventure, when I look at it, it's like it's good to be a specialist in something because there are no one else to do it.
It always helps to have a skill that no one else or only a few other people can do. Yeah, and that's. I mean, there's a little bit of luck in there as well, but yeah, help me anyway.
And the cool thing is, additionally to that, I spoke to so many developers and I heard many stories about people who, as you, started with all those levels editors, modding, and it's amazing and very cool how many people from turned their hobby into a work that can make some money on it.
It's a fantastic thing, and if you do that, as they say, you'll never have to work a day in your life because it's pure pleasure. And it's also, the games industry is full of self-motivated people who love to do things on their own initiative. So it's always helpful. And now it's easier than ever. It used to be there were quite a lot of technical barriers to doing. You had to understand a lot of things. You download things that had really labyrinthine instructions for getting them running. It was very hard work. Nowadays you can just download Unreal or whatever, and you can be making games and access the full power of that engine or Unity, as quickly as you like.
And looking generally at the industry, when we look at it, game developers since, I don't know, maybe even the 90s, they were always looking for that, trying to achieve that movie experience in game. Of course, you're doing the same in Supermassive Games. All started with the Until Dawn. And like I said, I like to dig in the past. If you could tell me how this project started, why did you decide to make a kind of interactive movie?
Well, Until Dawn was an idea that was being kicked around within Sony actually initially, and I can't speak too much about that because I don't know too much about it, but they had tried a couple of different approaches, and all they had really was something like a teen horror movie. They didn't really, and a slasher. They wanted a slasher element. And then it came to us at Supermassive, and that was partly because we'd shown expertise in the Move controller, if you remember that. It started out as a Move title. Yeah, we looked at it, and one of the things that the game director, Will Biles, wanted right at the start, he was very hardcore into the idea of doing a movie. So he was the game director on it. I was the design director. But initially we didn't really know what that meant. But Will kept pushing. It must be like a movie. We must get Hollywood talent, Hollywood screenwriter, the lighting, the sound. This is our kind of guiding principle. And ultimately that was very strong direction that steered us towards the product that we made. But it did actually cause, there was a lot to develop to achieve that. It wasn't obvious from a design perspective how to do that. And there were many points where we went down directions that ultimately didn't deliver on that. We had to back up a little bit. But yeah, that was the idea. We'd go, and the further we got onto it, the more this became our guiding star. Would it be in a movie? Would it be in specifically the type of movie that we were looking to make, a kind of slightly B-movie feel, teen horror, some sort of monster? And what would be the elements of that? Yeah, that was the direction. We kept doubling down on that.
From the very beginning, you really wanted to do a homage to all those classic slasher movies with teens dying in some gruesome ways.
Yes.
It was from the very beginning you were pointing in this direction.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. That was always the idea. The question was how. How do we do it? And that was not. And when you see the finished product, it kind of looks obvious, but it isn't obvious. You know, so for things, for example, we introduced this idea of choice. You know, you have to direct the narrative, and that came about because very early on we said, well, we have to have real death in this game. Not like a traditional game where it says you are dead. Do you want to continue playing? This was much more when a character dies, they're really dead and they're going to stay dead, and the whole story is going to continue, and that has immense shock value, especially the first time you encounter it. So, and that introduced this idea of branching. The narrative can change depending on what you do, and that kind of brought in this idea of choice, that you would make significant choices. So again, driven by the idea that we were trying to do something like a movie. Another thing that came up, there was a big learning experience. Actually, was we put in scares. You know, just things that made you jump scares. As we were developing, we developed a kind of sample level, which was Mike and Jessica walking to the cabin through the woods, and we put in a scare where a bird flies up in your face. And initially, the designers and me made it so that scare was dependent on what you did. You could avoid it, you could react in time, and then you wouldn't get the scare. But Will said the people are playing a game, a horror game, to get scared. We can't not give them the scare. You see what I mean? We were trying to gamify it, and he said, no, we have to be like a movie. The scare has to always happen. So we had to there was this constant debate between the gameplay and the needs of the design and this vision of making a horror movie that you could play. And there was many places where that was kind of stress tested about what it would finally become.
Yeah, it sounds very difficult and hard to do, because when you write a movie script, you have you know from the start what will happen from the A to B. You just write it, and of course there are some iterations on the way with actors, director, that we can change something. But in the end, you know what you'll get with scripts like Until Dawn. Of course, you have some direction of your story, but there are so many ways you can get to that point. So I guess it is challenging to keep up that every choice is attractive, because you can make sometimes the choice, and let's say that line A is very cool, cool things are happening. In line B, Yeah, we did it, but it wasn't the best. So you have to keep the eye on two different worlds.
Yeah, it is very difficult. And Until Dawn, bizarrely, we managed all that using a Word document, which I can't really believe anymore. So nowadays we have a tool that helps us design that, and it's basically a glorified flowchart tool, really. And it's difficult. But one of the things that's difficult is, just as you said, is you get, when you're thinking of a really great bit of narrative, there's usually one line that you want to go down that is. It's really exciting. It's got a great payoff. It really shows you something about the characters, and that's the first thing you come up with, and then you put that in, and then we say, well, what if the player doesn't do that? And that's where the problems start. And usually you'll get a weaker line coming out, and one of the rules we had right from the start was that all the versions of the story must be as good as the best. So we'd look at that weaker line and we'd say, well, how can we make it better? That's where all the energy goes in, just to trying to do that and bring that quality up. We keep having to, poor old designers will come to someone like me with an idea, and it'll get kicked out and come back again. It's quite a long iterative process. So that's one problem you have, and the other problem is that. I talk about this a lot, actually, is that narrative, any sort of story or narrative, it wants to be perfect. If you watch a film, that's the perfect version of the story. Everything happens just as it's meant to be to provide the most entertainment. Character arcs complete really nicely. The moral of the story becomes apparent. Someone will have a crisis and then resolve it, and it's all perfect. And it's perfect because the writers and the director have worked very hard to make it perfect. And as soon as you put choice in, as soon as you have a narrative with a choice, then you're making it not perfect. So the player can choose something that is off the perfect path. So there's this constant conflict between choice and the quality of the narrative, which has to be resolved. And that's things like characters can seem to have two completely different personalities. That's quite a common problem.
Oh yeah.
They're nice, but they're nasty, but they're nice. You have to find a way to resolve that. Or it's character arcs perhaps not completing in the way they wanted to. So yeah, those problems are very apparent and have to be solved early in development. I mean, they have to be completely solved. You can't get actors in and start spending a load of money there unless you've completely solved all these problems.
I see.
So we have this flowchart tool where we can plot the whole thing out. We put storyboards in there. We storyboard the whole thing, and we can play the whole game, making the choices, seeing all the different routes. We can get members of the public in, and they can play the whole game, and we watch them play, and we can interrogate them about the story. Did you enjoy it, and refine it? So a huge amount of work is done up front.
This flowchart tool you mentioned, this is your own tool, or is it?
It's an in-house tool. Yes, it's an in-house tool. There are similar tools now on the market, but what's nice about ours is that the whole game is playable. So we can, including the exploration sections, in a limited lo-fi form. So you can play the game with storyboards. You can make the choices. You can do some exploration. You could do the QTEs. You can even do multiplayer. We can do the two players playing together on the flowchart tool. It all looks very lo-fi, but it's very tailored to our games.
You came a long way from that one Word document.
From a massive Word document, yes.
You know what? I need to read this because I'm afraid to forget the name. Carl Ferrier, in his essay Games of Fear, it was a long time ago, claims that especially horror developers, like you, are fascinated by movies. Because when you look at it, in the 80s we had a lot of those 60-bit, 8-bit and 60-bit titles that they were adapting Friday the 13th or Halloween. In 90s we have Phantasmagoria and Resident Evil. The first one was completely very into cinematic. How do you think, why does the horror gaming genre really likes to be movie experience?
What horror is has become, or was for a time, very kind of tied up in the idea of a horror movie. Of course, horror is quite old. It goes back to the Gothic era, and probably it goes right back to kind of Beowulf is kind of horror if you think about it. The monster coming out of the swamp and ripping people's heads off is a kind of old horror story. But the idea of a horror movie developed, I guess, through the 60s and 70s and 80s especially, was a very powerful form. Lots of tech came together to deliver something that was really scary. You know, the cinematic presentation of it, the audio. So I guess it's just the power of influence, really. That was something that a lot of people saw when they were a very impressionable age, but perhaps younger than they were supposed to be watching them. There was always that kind of thrill of watching a horror movie that you weren't supposed to be watching. So I think that's the influence. When people decided they were going to do horror, that was the obvious influence to look towards. They could look at books as well. They could look at Stephen King, of course. But the games were a very visual medium. So this was the visual benchmark of what we are doing. I would say that nowadays, TV is also influential. We're looking at longer form horror through TV. And I think also it's clear that games are starting to influence those mediums as well. Well, I mean, The Last of Us is a really good example where you know, a horror game has become a very successful TV series. So there's more cross-fertilization. But yeah, the horror movie is the kind of original form that people were educated on, and the tropes of how that work are very embedded in what we do.
Plus, when you now think about it, this is something, when you said it, it came to me that this is true, that all those people in 90s making all those first horror games, they were teenagers in 70s, 80s, and they're geeks, all of them. And that's kind of, right now, for me, it's kind of obvious that they went into the horror genre. Yeah.
Well, I just think it's a very powerful visual genre, which with its own set of rules that are a little bit different from other film rules. You know, film plotting, it follows a template often, but horror films have their own template. You know, the idea of a group of 5 or 6 people in a space dying one by one, like you get in Friday the 13th or something like that, is quite unique to horror, actually. That's not how most films are made. So you get this formula that people recognise and they like, and it's reasonably flexible and works well with games. It's a formula that transitions well into games, I think.
Yeah, now when you look at it, the slasher movies were like battle royale games, last man standing, or something like that. So.
I remember when I was a kid, I went to see Psycho 2. Obviously, I didn't see the original Psycho. I'm much too young for that. But Psycho 2 was the first horror film I saw, I think, and I went to the cinema, and I was terrified by the film. And in fact, I remember lying awake. I could not go to sleep at night. I was lying awake at night, just thinking about you know. We're just scared, really.
But that's why it's very good that you're making horror games, because I remember that anecdote that Shinji Mikami has been chosen to direct the first Resident Evil, and he said that, no, I don't want to do it. I don't like horrors because I'm too scared of them. And they say, that's why you're perfect for it, because you know how to scare other people.
I'm a bit like that as well. I have become a bit immune to it, I have to say. But naturally, I'm very easily scared. And in fact, there's a kind of a joke in the studio that I will jump at my own jump scares, which is true. so when you play a game, you watch it, you play it over and over again. You watch other people playing it over and over again, and there are some jump scares that even though I know they are coming, and I know exactly when they're going to come. When that sting plays, then I'll jolt. No one else will. And if I've forgotten that it's coming, then I really jump hard at that.
So that's why I think you're the perfect man in the perfect place for now. So we already spoke a little bit about it, because the cool thing with your tool, Flowchart, but I wanted to go back a little bit and ask how the whole process of creating such game looks like. I just wanted to know if games like Until Dawn or The Devil in Me, you are working on them more like movies or more like games, because you also need to spend some time on set with actors in some of those strange costumes to create them. So how the process looks like?
It is a bit of both. So I guess the process fits into 3 stages. The first stage is a very creative stage where we develop a story. It's usually a small group of people. Alongside that, we're doing some work on the art production, the concept. We're trying to work out what it is we're going to make. We develop the story. We start working out the the narrative. We might bring a writer in at this point. We might be working with narrative designers, and we will go very deep into that, and we will plan out the whole game in this stage. So it's a lot of work up front. At the same time, we do all the concept art and the planning for the game. That's the first stage. So by the end of that stage, we kind of know what we're going to make, who the characters are, what they're going to do, the storylines, and we can play a version of the game. Mm-hmm. The next stage is the stage that's a bit more like a film. So then we will bring in a writer. They've probably been brought in earlier, actually, but I'm simplifying it. So we build in a writer, we write a script, and we scrutinise that script. We spend a huge amount of time on the script because it's more complicated than a film script. It's especially with the branches. If you've got a line of dialogue here, it can go to 3 different places, or sometimes a line can come from 3 different places, and we have to make sure everything works. And we also have huge problems with continuity, that people talk about something that happened, and we think, well, wait a minute, that may not have happened. How do we resolve that? So there's a lot of time spent on the script.
That's the problem with so many choices and
yes, exactly.
roles,
Just keeping track of everything is very, very difficult. Spend a lot of time on the script, and then we cast it. We cast it like a movie. We will get a casting director in. We will do audition tapes. We will talk to the actors. That's a very exciting phase. We will sit around, and then we move into a full kind of. It's not really like a film set. It's actually, in a way, it's more like a play. Funnily enough, it's what happens is we have this very intense 2 or 3 weeks where we get the actors all onto a sound stage. They often don't really know much about what they're working on. They've used to working in a very linear form like film or TV, so we have to explain how the branching works. But we record all the dialogues. We record maybe some physical stuff as well. But it's very intense, and we do it. We don't. A thing I have to explain to the actors is kind of backwards from in a movie, you get the lighting set up and the set is built and the makeup goes on, and then finally, right at the end, an actor does their performance. And we say it's the other way around. We're going to do the performance first, and then we'll build the set around you, we'll put the cameras in, later on we'll do all that. So we can work very, very quickly. So it's like they kind of like it because it's quite fast. Whereas movies is sitting around for days and days and then going on and doing a 5-minute bit and then come back tomorrow.
10 hours for the next shot.
Exactly, yeah. So whereas we're going very, very fast through the material, it's very creative. We're trying to let the actors, bring these characters to life. It's often very different to how they've appeared on the page. It's a very humbling experience, and it's a very exciting experience to see people bring these characters alive. And we get all the face. This is the face data, as I say, some of the body motion capture increasingly. Anyway, that's about 3 weeks. And then we have a longer phase where we do the rest of the motion capture, which is done on a different type of stage. And this is all of the very physical stuff, fights.
More of a fighting, combat.
Combat, or big scenes that are difficult to arrange. And that goes on, that takes longer because you have to build sets and things like that. That can go on for months, actually. But that's the second stage, is capturing all the performance. And that's more like being in a movie. And then there's a long production stage, which is much more traditional game development. That's the people in the studio, the talented people at Supermassive Games, working at their computers, bringing all these performances to life, creating the character models, creating the sets, doing the cameras, the lighting, the audio, and slowly it gets closer and closer and closer to the final product, and then we're playing it, we're looking at it, iterating it, polishing it. So that's a long third stage, and then hopefully your game pops out at the end of it.
So sounds simple, but it isn't.
Oh, it's not simple. No, it requires a lot of organisation. They're big teams. We need people to make sure things are happening in the right order. There's a lot of dependencies where we depend on different things to get things moving. So no, it's very complicated.
Like you mentioned, you had some familiar and famous faces in your games. I'm curious, how a guy like, for example, Rami Malek finds himself in such work. Like you said, it's completely different from working on the movie. Yeah, different actors approach it in different ways, really. Usually, sometimes people have experience, they've experienced it, but often that experience, because the tech moves so quickly, often that experience is out of date. So in the old days, the motion capture used to have a big kind of lead, cables
coming to your...
You had to be connected?
You had to be connected
okay.
to get all the cameras to work, which obviously is very restricting on the actor. But we work with wireless headsets and wireless gear, which is much more liberating. We used to have to paint dots all over faces, but now we don't really have to do that anymore. And the tech is getting better and better on that. So they might have used the tech before, but if they haven't, there's a learning experience with that. And they might have played games, but they might not. When on The Devil in Me, we had Jessie Buckley, who's a wonderful actress and a lovely person, but she not only had never done anything for games, she had never played a game. And she had very little awareness of the whole thing. She didn't understand
the concept.
The whole thing was extremely weird for her. And it took her about a day just to get her... I don't think she ever really understood it, actually. But she was very game, and she said, OK, this is what you want me to do, then I'm going to do it. And she's great. But yes, it was the whole thing of, record this line, and now pretend you'd never said that, and we'll go back to here, and now you said this instead. And your actors usually quite enjoy that eventually. Once they get the idea, they usually enjoy it. And
when we were speaking about your past, your beginning, because in the industry, you told us about mods, about level editors, about tools that are changing with time, that we are using completely different tools than a long time ago. The entry level is quite low. And I'm curious, do you think that maybe not now, but in not some distant future, we'll get to the point where indie developers can make games at least a little bit similar to Until Dawn, something like that. When for now you can, if you want, of course, it wouldn't be as advanced as what you are doing, but now you can do mock-up in your own room.
We are at that stage now. That's possible now, and I know because I've talked to students who've shown me games that are incredibly impressive. And that's because they have the tools available to them. They can do, a student at university can do motion capture. It's reasonably easy to do face capture now to good enough quality for them. We're constantly pushing the quality of the face capture, so and the quality of the faces we use. But it's for indie quality, absolutely, that's achievable now. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing that you can just, if you know Unreal Engine, for example, and you have some tools, you can pretty much do anything right now.
Yeah, the accessibility of the tools is fantastic. The intellectual problems you've got to solve around writing a story and getting those great performances, those are still there and they're difficult. But it's great that that's become the difficulty now rather than a technical difficulty.
No one says it's impossible. It's just difficult, but it's not impossible.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think it will give indies who have license to be more creative and could take more risks. So I think that's fantastic that they can do that.
Okay, so now, like you said, it's happening right now. So, and I want to try to go to the future. Do you think that in the future we'll have such tools that it will be cheaper and better to make interactive video game movies than the regular movies? Because with regular movies, you need to find, even if when you speak about small independent projects, you need to find a set, you need to have a crew. I'm not saying that it's very easy to make a game, but maybe in the future it's going to be just sitting on the computer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, to some extent that's happening with the amount of CG in films, I think. On the other hand, it can actually be significantly more expensive to build computer, CG sets. So for example, we're in this fantastic bar. I don't know how much people can see of it. And we can just bring cameras in here and film it, right?
Yes,
and set some lights up, and we have a cinematic look, and that's actually a lot cheaper than creating.
You're doing it right now, yeah?
But if I went to the studio and make something exactly like this to the same quality, that would be a significant expense.
Okay, so maybe we will never be on the stage, but who knows?
I think it's more likely we will start scanning real-world stuff to get in-game assets. I think that's round the corner, probably.
Okay. So when we are in the future, please tell me what can we, of course, I know you can't tell me everything, but if you can say what we can expect from the next projects by Supermassive Games. Now you have a time to make an advertisement.
Well, I can't tell you things. I can tell you that.
I understand.
I can tell you that we're doing series 2 of the Dark Pictures anthology. We're already making multiple games in that series. So the way we make games is we have parallel development. So there'll be one game will be approaching completion, one game will be kind of in the middle, one game will be in concept, one game will just be a few bits of work. So that's going on within the studio, and it's very exciting, and those games looking great. They're all different, of course. One of the things we've done with the Dark Pictures is exploring different subgenres of horror, so we'll keep doing that. They'll be different from the series of one genres, and we're always looking to push things forward, give the audience something new, something exciting. So, yep, that's all happening.
Okay, can wait for your next project. And extra question, if you had an opportunity, would you like to make a movie one day? Not a game, a movie? Or it's not your thing?
Well, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
When I was at university, I thought I would like to be a movie director, but I did absolutely nothing about it. I mean, I didn't read up on films. God, just an idea that I would like to do, and I have actually ended up in a position where a lot of what I do is very similar to a movie director. You know, I'll be talking through camera shots and talking to audio people. So I'm very, very lucky in that regard, and I'm not quite sure I deserve it. Yeah, I'm interested in all narrative forms, actually. So sure, I'd love to make a movie. But I love making games. It's a fantastic job, and I just feel very privileged that I've been able to do it. So
I'm just curious that if, I don't know, the fate would make you create a movie, then maybe you'll go behind the camera and you say, I cannot once again do choices of different nights.
I would be horrific.
Maybe you would feel those limitations.
I would, because everything I do, as I say, is the wrong way around. So that whole process of setting up a shot before the performance is exactly the opposite to the way round we work at Supermassive. So I will say to the actors, just give us a great performance, and we will come in afterwards and we will put the camera in the perfect place to capture the nuances of that performance. But you can't do that if you're making a movie. No. You have to think up ahead. So I don't really have the skills, and I imagine it would be a disaster, actually, and I'd have a film crew in tears.
Okay, I see that. At the very end, I always like to ask that very stupid and silly question to my guests. Imagine that you are on the deserted island, but you can take 3 games with you. Of course, let's imagine that you have electricity and consoles you need, but what 3 games would you take with you?
Well, I'm happy to take advice on this, actually. So usually nowadays, because I'm a little bit old and I've got a family to look after, I like games that are really short. There's nothing I like better than finding out the game is 8 to 10 hours long. It's like, wow, great, I can finish this one. Because I don't finish a lot of games that I start. However, on a desert island, I think I would have to reverse that, and I would have to say, give me the longest possible game that I possibly could. And the other thing is, I don't want to play any games that I've already played. I don't know if people usually say, oh, I love this game, I don't want to do that. I want to play new games that I've never played. So I would like one really big RPG that I haven't played. If The Elder Scrolls 6 happened to come out,
I don't know if you'll live till then.
Okay, right, yes, that's true. Yeah, that's true. So maybe it's something like Cyberpunk. I haven't played that. Yeah. Well, that's a good one. Let's take Cyberpunk, right? Because I've not played it, and I reckon there's plenty of hours to sink into that one, and it's got Keanu Reeves in it. And
I can say the game is amazing, and they already fixed it. So
great, yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So I know it's been fixed.
Yes,
because so I'll take Cyberpunk. That'll be really good. I would like some fun platformer game.
Oh, okay.
That I haven't played. Maybe a recent Mario game. I haven't played a Mario game for quite a long time, and I love those games. But I don't know. I can't even think what the most recent ones.
Super Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, let's take that. That'd be great, because also you get hours of gameplay out of those, and they're fun, and they're just brilliant game design, and I love those.
There are 2.
That's 2. Okay, and then maybe. I'll tell you what I wouldn't take. I would not take a horror game.
Not horror game.
I don't want a horror game stuck on the island. And also, I will only I'll play that one, so I won't take that. Maybe I'll take something like a city builder, city skyline. Haven't played that. I used to play SimCity a lot and games like that.
Oh, okay, spending so many hours.
Hours, or a football manager game. I'll take City Skyline. I'll take that. And that's that's a different bit of my brain being used there. Do you know what? I'd be all right with that. An island all by myself. That sounds quite nice. Is it tropical? Can I?
Yes,
you
can,
and warm?
you can even have drinks if you
Yeah.
want.
Okay. Great. No. Brilliant.
So yeah, you have very great choices because if I would be on your place, I could take only City Skylines, and that would be enough for me. I can sit there.
You want something to eat up time, right?
Yeah. When the rescuers will come, no, I don't want. Okay. Tom, those are all questions I had to you. Thank you very much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for inviting me.
FEARDEMIC'S Apartment, speak about Supermassive Games, what you're working on. We are super excited. We are waiting for what you're cooking there, and you don't want to share right now, but we are waiting for it. And if any developers, indie developers or not indie developers are listening to us, listen to Tom. You can do amazing stuff with current tools because they are super powerful.
It's true. And thank you for having me on. It's been great.
Thank you.